So let's start from the Daily Guide, and it starts with the big story right from yesterday. Mahama suspends Torkonoo, comes with a picture of the suspended Chief Justice Gertrude Torkonoo and now the acting Chief Justice Paul Bafo-Boni. And NPP are calling for an apology from the president over what they call the failed Galamsey fight. And then really disturbing stories, also 3 of them on the front page of the Daily Guide. JHS student lynched over phone, and then man's penis cut off in lavish room. And then yes, and then 13 others.
But it's a sad issue.
It's a very, very serious issue.
Very, very serious.
But how come, was he asleep or something?
I don't know. The story is on page 3. I think he might have gone to the girlfriend's place. We'll get into that. And then there is 13 killed, others injured in gory accident. That accident at Suhum yesterday, also making the headlines.
Right. So I mean, it's the same here on the front page of the Ghanaian publisher. We've got a picture of President Mahama and the suspended Chief Justice, all of them looking up to something. It's unclear what they are looking up to, but all of they've got their eyes fixed on something. Ghana's day of shame as Mahama suspends Chief Justice. Minority describes action as judicial coup. And of course, there's also the Minority Leader Alexander Fenyoma depoliticized entrepreneurship, according to him, and he spoke at the Kwahu Business Forum. There's also government mining decisions could spark job losses, repel investors. This is also coming from the minority, but again, I think that the biggest story that broke yesterday and still making rounds this morning is the suspension of the Chief Justice of the Republic of Ghana. And if I can just go to the minority, the Ghana Judicial and political landscape has been shaken by the suspension of the Chief Justice, Her Ladyship Justice Gertrude Araba Esaba Saki Torkonoo, by President John Mahama, following the establishment of a prima facie case in response to multiple petitions. We're talking about 3 of them seeking her removal from office. And the minority described the suspension of reckless abuse of executive power. The minority in Parliament sharply criticized President Mahama's decision, describing it as politically motivated attempt to interfere with the independence of the judiciary. In a strongly worded statement issued right after the suspension release, the minority called the suspension a brazen judicial coup and a reckless abuse of power, stating that it undermines the judiciary and poses a serious threat to Ghana's democratic institutions. According to the minority, the process appears to be part of a broader political agenda aimed at reshaping the judiciary.
And it, talking about this story, the latest head of the judiciary, the acting Chief Justice, in the person of Justice Paul Bafo-Boni, is, we also know who he is and what exactly he stands for in some of these issues. It's also the story that Daily Guide has been leading with. And Justice Paul Bafo-Boni, as we know, appointed to the court in 2008 by President John Ejekum Kufuor. He went there with his peers, Justice Doche and also Justice Eniniebo, who have all since retired. He is set to retire perhaps in 2027 or 2028, and he's going to hold the mantle until a determination is made on Chief Justice Gertrude Torkonoo. The Daily Guide also definitely has the angle from the minority about this being a brazen judicial coup. They do not believe that the president was right in activating his discretion under the Constitution to suspend the Chief Justice following the determination of a prima facie case in this matter. Winston.
Yes, I mean, look, you would say, let the law take its course, isn't it? If someone is petitioned and if the president determines the prima facie, why not? But you see, when you are in a position and you constantly make comments about the fact that there's a need to reset areas like the judiciary, the electoral commission, and then you come into office and go ahead. Now, mind you, just before Akufo-Addo left office, there was a petition. Akufo-Addo deemed that it wasn't worth it, so he didn't act on it. I mean, he consulted the Council of State and realized that it wasn't important because then it didn't become it didn't have a prima facie. My point simply is this. If Justice Torkonoo has done anything wrong and per the laws of this country has to be removed, no problem. But where the NDC in opposition consistently made references to the fact that the judiciary needed a reset, and consistently you had their members, even a lot of their social media guys, demanding the removal of the Chief Justice on a daily basis.
Yeah.
And when you speak, and the reference is that, oh, but Shaltose was removed.
Yeah.
We are in for we are in for a problem in this country.
I mean, if it's going to become a cycle
because if look, you may say, oh, but she's done something wrong.
Yeah.
I say, if you didn't say you were going to do it, and it just happened that she's done something wrong, why not? But if we are not careful, we're going to institute a system where the judiciary, after every election, will have a new Chief Justice.
Yeah. I think, Winston, my problem is given the way the process is shrouded in secrecy. And of course, the Constitution that says that this process should be held in camera. And then the Supreme Court itself, some years ago, almost a decade ago, ruling that this process must be completely out of the public side in terms of what exactly. So as we speak, none of us know specifically why the Chief Justice has been suspended. We don't know.
We don't know.
And so even if it's something so grave, for which reason the public would have known that and say that, oh, right on the face of this, there is a basis for which reason the Chief Justice ought to be suspended, for which reason the process must move forward. We don't know. And I don't think that it is in terms of the constitutional democracy we want to build, it is fair that such a process should be shrouded in secrecy. Of course, I get the idea behind it, and I read that Datiba's judgment and the idea behind the process, so that you don't want to put certain allegations. Some of them may be frivolous, and because the process has not concluded, then you put out it just goes out there, destroys names of people, reputations of people. I also think somehow that some way, the way the public conversation has been shaped, and I recognize the point you make about the NDC's commentary in opposition and what he said about doing enforce. Some people have said that this is all a system, and right after the Chief Justice perhaps falls, the next in line will be the Electoral Commission, etc., etc. But also, what this process, where we are now, is that a prima facie case has been made. That means that on the face of the evidence that has been provided and the Chief Justice's own response, the President, in conjunction with the Council of State, believe that there is something to investigate.
Right.
And now, as of now, the Chief Justice has not been deemed guilty.
No, she's not.
Not at all. And in fact, a 5-member committee with 2 of his own peers, her own peers, are going to determine whether or not she should be removed or not. What the President has done is to say that you have to step aside because maybe I don't want you to interfere with the investigation going forward. Because then you have Justice Gabriel Puaman.
Really, can she interfere with the investigation?
Well, it's the same reason why police officers are interdicted. If you're a police commander in a region and something happens under your watch, and your subordinates, for instance, are asked to investigate and you are still there, perhaps the idea is that you're going to interfere, or your being there will not allow the investigation to proceed.
Especially if you are a high-ranking officer.
And you are the Chief Justice.
Yeah, of course. And you've got some of your peers who
are going to be on this, just like you said.
But the interesting twist to all of this, and I'm reading some comments on social media by some Ghanaians. This is coming from Frank Kujo. It says, the name of the committee members that will adjudicate the Chief Justice matter should let you know it is finished. And that is what Frank is saying. And then he also asks a very important question. How do we suspend or remove a whole Chief Justice without the public getting to know why?
Exactly.
This is an unwise constitutional dictate.
And I think the big problem for me is how the Supreme Court interpreted that under Datiba, that this process must be completely shrouded in secrecy up until the end of it. So much so that up until the process is completed and the presidency deemed fit to perhaps communicate the nature of the petition that went in there and what exactly may have caused that. Because if today the president is to be impeached, all of us will know from get-go what exactly that is.
I actually heard, I've heard Sami Jimfi was on
Asempa.
Ekusi saying on Asempa yesterday. He talked about certain aspects of the petition. What I heard, for instance, was, I'm sure you may have seen
Yeah.
documents
The audit
on
report.
the audit report, for instance, and he confirms that, he talks about how hundreds of thousands of Ghana cedis were spent on the Chief Justice's daughter and husband in a private trip.
According to what is making rounds.
Yes.
109,000 cedis went into the purchase of a first class ticket, and $10,000 as per diem for this person in question.
Yeah, and so he's talked about it, and he said, and listening to me, but you see, for me, and this is not something I've always said, and part of the reason I have always, been cautious in my criticism of the judiciary is the fact that the executive is gone. The legislature is gone. The only arm of government with a sense of, some level of independence and respect by the Ghanaian populace is the judiciary.
Do you sense respect for the judiciary, looking at what we hear when judgments come down and all that?
And but you see, this is the point. And I'll say this. Look, up in the election petition, I'm sure the NDC themselves knew the case they had presented.
Well, the CDM just said in court that they didn't bring the evidence when it was questioned.
So you see, you don't go to court with such a case and start a song of unanimous 7, unanimous 7, unanimous 7, and pretend as if you had a case and then the judges ruled against you. That case, right from the get-go, everybody knew that if you go to court and say that per the electoral commissioner, per the chairman of the electoral commission, there shall be a second one, my goodness. That's where the evidence per your numbers. And it took Justice Appel to say
to do that cross-examination.
That if you do your own addition,
what's the result?
He said they didn't bring the evidence to court.
But he says, but if you look at this, it says, if I look at this, yes, it was won in the first round by the Akufo-Addo. My point simply is this: if Kerr she's not guilty yet. I've seen the jubilation everywhere. People started, it is today, it is today, it is today. I say, if care is not taken, we will get to a level where in this country, at the end of the tenure of every government, there will be a new Chief Justice. In
fact, the MPP, they've served that notice. In fact, yesterday when I spoke to Richard Anyagba on the polls, he made mention of the fact that if there should be a change in government, we should prepare to go through a similar route. And so, the tone clearly has been set. But, clearly, this is not a matter that's finality has been brought on it. The Chief Justice will have a day before the committee and defend the allegations against. I'm sure that the Council of State is made up of men of integrity, men with professional competence, and if they came to the conclusion that there's a case to be answered, let's give them the benefit of the doubt and then allow the process to go through. I'm sure that it is open, it will be free, it will be fair. We can only trust in the integrity and the proper judgment of the 5-member committee to do a thorough job. And then whatever outcome that they will come up with, back with facts, not just, illusions. Perhaps some sanity will prevail on this matter.
I agree with you completely. And at the end of this process, what we should expect is that the presidency must publish the full set of petitions that went against the Chief Justice, her responses initially, the committee's work, the full transcripts of what may have transpired at the committee level and what might have led to their conclusion, whether or not the Chief Justice ought to be removed or she ought to stay in office. That must come to douse all these, because of course, if just for the sake of argument, if the evidence were to come out today and the public was satisfied that, this is good enough basis to do this, then it will quell all the back talks and all the concern.
But I'm interested in this. I'm interested in some clarity on this matter. If indeed one of the allegations against the Chief Justice is that she and her husband traveled on a private visit, and then the daughter was also with them, and state funds was used to purchase a ticket and pay the. I have seen past president and current president travel with their families. So is it a case that the rules apply to certain category of people and doesn't apply to certain category of people?
I guess it's a big conversation that are we holding the Chief Justice and other persons to a higher standard than we're going to do to certain political office holders. And for instance, we saw when it came to the Ford car issue, when he was raising parliament.
If the Auditor General flags it, it means unacceptable. As a point, if the Auditor General flags that expenditure, it means.
But
it's
we see that with
unacceptable.
Public Accounts Committee, with executives, they go there and go and put up very shoddy
Yes, but
defenses.
Yes.
And they get to retain their office and come back the next year with the same issues. And some of these, again,
Okay.
I mean, if there are procurement irregularities, for instance, some of them can be ratified at the end of the day and all that. It's a big conversation that
It's a
we
big
need to have.
conversation. Let's get to the online news review. And this is an assault on the judiciary. NPP's Frank Davies criticizes Chief Justice suspension. This taints Ghana's image abroad. Some of you to criticizes Chief Justice suspension. Now, they want her out because she's not liked. NPP legal head condemns attack on Chief Justice, and minority condemns attack on condemns Mahama's suspension of Chief Justice as judicial coup. You talked about that, Elton, and also Tamale Teaching Hospital CEO sacked.
Winston, let me make a point about this. I don't get this point about politicians going into hospitals with cameras and then confronting hospital staff about what is going wrong, what is not going wrong, and making a scene, and then making these poor doctors who are working in unimaginable situations as the ones causing all this problem. If a hospital does not have a ventilator, what can a doctor do about it? Doctors are going all in to try and save patients. Some of them are going into their own pocket. Why are politicians going to hospitals with cameras? If you are the Minister of Health, do you know, I mean, are there no inventories of supposed facilities that are not working? What is going on? And if a CEO, then they tell the doctor, keep quiet. I tell you to keep quiet. As though it's a senior housemaster and a student in a dormitory. What is going on?